A couple years ago, our above ground pool was worn out, so my wife and I decided to put in an in-ground pool. We'd seen do-it-yourself kits, and I started researching them. One thing I could tell you, I see DIY and automatically think, do it by yourself. Anyway, we decided on a steel wall vinyl liner kit and chose a lagoon or amoeba shape rather than a plain rectangle or round or oval or even a kidney. Once we decided on the plans, I marked out my backyard, applied for permits, and started digging and digging and digging. I was finally convinced by my wife to rent some equipment to speed along the process. That was cool. I had a 3-day weekend coming up, so I rented a backhoe, had it delivered Friday afternoon. The equipment arrived and we started to use it. The backhoe we rented, or were sent, was old, slow. It took me most of Friday and Saturday to get it adjusted so we could use it. Sunday and Monday, my wife and I got a good amount of excavation done, but I realized that I would probably need to have it at least 2 more weekends. Of course, the next 2 weekends it rained. Then I rented a backhoe for 2 weeks. It worked out cheaper than renting for 2 weekends. Had it delivered Friday evening and went to work first thing on Saturday, only to have the front wheel bearing come apart about 10 a.m. So when they came out to fix it, they didn't have the part in stock. And they had to order it in. It didn't get fixed until Wednesday. So another weekend wasted. The following weekend, Memorial Day weekend, was another 3-day weekend. And Friday night, the other front wheelbarrow went out. Another part had to be ordered, so the company delivered a mini excavator and a skid steer for me to use until the backhoe could be repaired. That was nice considering I had planned on getting the skid steer anyway, so I could unload the truck delivering my pool kit. The delivery went well, for the most part, and I was able to get the pool panels placed around without too much hassle. The only problem was the braces they sent were wrong. So I had to wait another 2 weeks for the correct ones to come in before I could set the panels in place. I finally manhandled them into place and was able to get them set and braced as the summer was coming to an end. The next step was to pour the concrete footer, basically a 2-foot by 2-foot band around the whole pool. I bought a small cement mixture from Harbor Freight and mixed all the concrete myself, 1 wheelbarrow at a time. Because I was still working my regular job and about 30 hours of overtime every week, I was only able to work on this project on dry weekends. After getting the panel set in place, there was still a good amount of dirt to be dug out, and all this had to be done by hand at this point because the equipment had been returned, and I really didn't have the money to rent it again. I would be digging dirt and running the plumbing lines for the returns and the suction lines. The winter continued to be wet and not much progress was made until the spring. When spring arrived, anytime it was dry enough, I was out digging and backfilling. By the end of May that year, I had the bottom dug out and shaped. The next step was to start cementing the bottom. This was putting in about 1.5 to 2 inches of a sand mixed concrete on the entire bottom and the sides of the hopper. This involved carrying the concrete mixed down in buckets, pouring it and spreading it, then repeating over and over. As you can imagine, this was another consuming phase, and it was the heat of the summer, so it was definitely a lot of work. Once the bottom was done, I had to put the coping along the top edge, and then I was finally ready to install the liner. I did have my son help position and stretch out the liner, and we had it ready to start putting in water in just a couple hours. I filled the pool slowly, making sure it it set in place with as few wrinkles as possible. This allowed me time to cut the holes for the light, the returns, and the skimmers when the water level was high enough. I also had to cut out the opening for the stairs. This caused a lot of anxiety, as one small mistake could ruin the entire liner. At this point, I ran into another major issue. I had secured an electrician before getting the building permit because it was required. Otherwise, I probably would have just done the electric myself as well. My original electrician had told me that I had to run a bonding wire around the entire pool and that the trench for the power line needed only be 8 inches deep. So that's what I did. Trying to save some expense, I went ahead and did that part myself. Now that it was time for him to actually come and do the electric hookup, I called him to set up time for him to do the work. He set an appointment time and then never showed up. I called him the next day. He gave me an excuse and set another time. Again, the appointment time came and went. Made a third appointment, same thing. Now a month has gone by, and I keep trying to call him, but I can never get a hold of him. Finally, he calls while I'm at work and leaves a message that he's not going to be able to do the job. So now I'm in a panic. Here I am, end of the summer, and I have no electric, and pool's not getting done this year. So I made several phone calls to find a new electrician. And then he has to go get the permit renewed, and then tells me the bonding wire that I used is not the way it needs to be done, and I have to undo the whole thing. And then he went and reconnected a bonding wire the correct way. The trench should have been 18 inches, not 8. So now I have to start over with both. And I needed to build a wall where the electric panel would be. The original electrician just said I could put a post. Eventually, after another couple weeks, the electric was completed and I was able to turn the pump on. Unfortunately, this was about the beginning of October, so it was too late in the season for swimming. But it would be ready for the next year. The only thing left was to pour concrete for the curb and the sidewalk around the outside of the pool. Again, I mixed the concrete in my little mixer and poured it with the wheelbarrow. Blocks around the pool are about 2 foot by 2 foot approximately, and about 4 inches thick. I could only do a few at a time, so it did take a while, but this allowed me to avoid using rebar and having to bond all of that, because every little piece of metal would have had to been connected to that bonding wire. There are a few important things that I learned and reinforced throughout this process. One, if I were to build another pool, I would either hire an excavator or rent better equipment. It can be done by yourself, but you would sure save a lot of time by hiring a professional. Number two, take off from work all the time you can and not try to do this only in your spare time. And three, have faith you can do it, a thing like this, and you can. Don't give up and don't lose faith. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, check out any other videos I've done. Thank you.